Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth and will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we're talking about navigating PPP loan forgiveness. I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, a web commerce and web and e-development group, Boulay Group, CPAs and advisors, Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency, Minnesota Sales, a sales acceleration firm, Host Pros USA, a managed service provider of website support, management, security, and reliability, and the Network Connect. Subscribe and like our Club E channel. That will help us serve you, our wonderful audience. And I'll take a moment. It's right down by the video. Click that subscribe button and like button, and that will let you know when we are going live. You can also now catch our Club E podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Today, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Kim Storey, Senior Vice President and Director of SBA Lending at Highland Bank, a longtime Club E sponsor. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Rick. As Rick mentioned, I am the Director of SBA Lending at Highland Bank, which is a top 10 SBA preferred lender in Minnesota. I've been with the bank for over 15 years, and I've worked in SBA lending for over 20 years now. I also serve on the board of directors as treasurer for SPEDCO, which is a nonprofit certified development company that provides SBA 504 real estate financing to businesses. And I'm also a member of the National Association of Government Guaranteed Lenders.
Well, thank you for that. And also thanks for taking your time with us. Obviously, this has been all consuming for you for the last couple of months.
That is for sure. Thanks, Rick, for having me.
Yeah. And anything else in your background you'd like to share, yourself, your family, other activities that you're involved with?
So I'm married. I have 2 kids, and my son is just graduated from the U of M, and my daughter, we just got her moved in for her 3rd year at Marquette University, so we're kind of empty nesters again right now. We enjoy spending time at our family cabin up in the Cross Lake area, and yeah, boating and hiking and biking as much as we can.
All right, great. And so the one son looking for a job now, or is he's landed?
He's got one, luckily. So yeah,
good.
He's all good.
Good. Yeah, my daughters are just off to college here this week as well. So busy time in your household. All right, before we get to our event, let's tell our audience what they can get for their participation. Put your questions into the comment field and type in PPP forgiveness for our hashtag today. Again, PPP forgiveness. Up to 3 winners will receive a fabulous Highland Bank golf umbrella. And again, up to 3 of those will be given away for the hashtag PPP forgiveness. Regarding the questions, just want to make an announcement for past events. We have fielded those questions in live time and tried to weave those in. Kim has a lot of good content today, so we're going to let Kim work through her presentation, but you can submit your questions, and either we will get to those afterwards or someone from Highland Bank will reach out to you and answer your questions. So you can put those into your comments field. And again, if you want to go in the drawing for the golf umbrellas, it's PPP forgiveness. And then lastly, because of the size of our audience, we appreciate you all joining us today and the volume of questions that might happen, we have the email in the comments field, that being customer.service@highland.bank. And then you also can find information in the SBA resources section of the Highland.bank website for information here. All right, so again, Kim, thanks for joining us. Obviously, a lot of interest here in what's going on. Also, your job is a little challenging in that things have been moving around and clarity has been coming kind of on an ongoing basis and a little bit of a moving target on some things. But as we dive in, for folks that want to do a forgiveness application, what form should they use? And is there any sort of universal standard?
Yeah, so the SBA has released two different forms that borrowers can use to apply for their PPP loan forgiveness. One is known as the EZ version, which is shorter and less to fill out, and the other is the regular version, a little bit longer and requires more calculations and documentation. So in order to be eligible to use the EZ form, the borrower has to meet at least one of these three criteria. They have to be a business owner who is self-employed and has no employees, or did not reduce the salary or wages of their employees by more than 25%, and did not reduce the number of full-time employees or their hours during the covered period. Or the third is if they experienced reductions in business activity as a result of a health directive related to COVID-19 and did not reduce the salaries or wages of their employees by more than 25%. So meeting one of those three allows people to use that EZ form, which is much easier to complete.
Okay. So again, a reminder for everybody, we can tackle questions at the end, and or someone from Highland Bank can get to you. I can already tell there's going to be a lot of info here and a lot of stuff that folks will want to reach out to you. Kim, customer.service@highland.bank is going to be the email. All right, so what steps can I or business owners out there make to ensure that the entire PPP loan is forgiven? And then kind of attached to that, are there any common mistakes that I should watch out for to make sure that I avoid?
So I think the big thing is, you must use 60% of your PPP loan on payroll costs. That can include compensation to employees in the form of wages, salary, and commissions, vacation time, family, medical, sick leave, and payments for benefits. Payroll costs can also cover payment of local and state taxes, but not federal taxes. And I see that occasionally where people are trying to put federal taxes in there, and those are not eligible. The borrower has the option of using the original 8-week covered period or the extended 24-week covered period. For full forgiveness, you should also maintain the number of full-time workers and avoid cutting employees' hours or wages. Now take note of the special rules that pertain to allowable owner's compensation. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. And then what amount of owner compensation is eligible for forgiveness? I know that's a common question that comes up with all the business owners in the audience.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's different rules for owners of companies versus all their employees, and they're just a little bit more restrictive. So the amount of compensation for owners who work at the business and that are eligible for forgiveness depends on the business type and whether the borrower is using an 8-week or 24-week covered period. And keep in mind that's an option. They can choose either or. For borrowers that are electing to use the 24-week covered period, the amount of loan forgiveness allowed for owner employees and self-employed individuals' payroll compensation is capped at $20,833 per individual. And that is in total across all businesses in which they have an ownership stake. They can decide how much they want to go to each business, but the total can't exceed $20,833. For borrowers that received a PPP loan before June 5th, 2020, and are electing to use an 8-week covered period, the cap is $15,385. So owner compensation is calculated based on their wages from 2019, and it's based on that tax return. No additional forgiveness can be included for retirement or health insurance contributions for self-employed individuals, including Schedule C filers and general partners. So I think the key takeaway is for your employees, you can include wages. There's not a cap except for the $100,000. You can include benefits and things like that, state and local taxes. But for owners, they have the cap, and it's tied to whatever their wages were in 2019. There's no, you're not tying employees' wages back to 2019, just owners. That makes sense. I think that's the big tricky thing about trying to figure or calculate this.
Yep. And I imagine this is something that comes up a lot with you.
It does. Yeah. Yep. It does. We've got a lot of, single member companies that are trying to figure out, how do they calculate it? Where do they calculate it from? It doesn't matter what they're paying themselves this year. It matters what they were paid last year.
Okay. And then again, for additional information, it's in the SBA resources section on the Highland Bank website. And then again, for those of you out there who have questions, please submit those. We either will try to get to you real time at the end of our event or have someone from Highland Bank reach out to you. And our hashtag again is hashtag PPP forgiveness. And for those of you who are golfers, a fabulous Highland Bank golf umbrella. All right. So what if my loan forgiveness is reduced? What steps can I take to increase my forgiveness level? And what options do I have to try to tweak that if it comes back not to my liking?
Yep. So, aside from failing to spend the funds on approved business costs that are laid out by the SBA, a drop in the number of full-time employees, also known as FTEs, or reductions of more than 25% to workers' wages will result in a reduction to your loan forgiveness. However, there are FTE reduction exemptions that will keep borrowers from being penalized for a drop in their workforce. I've got a couple examples. So if you made a good faith written offer to rehire an employee who was working for the company before February 15th, 2020, that's kind of the date that is a reference, and that person refused to come back to work, and you were unable to hire a similarly qualified employee, then the reduction in full-time workers will not count against your forgiveness. You can kind of claim a safe harbor for that employee. If you made a good faith written offer to restore any reduction to an employee's hours and the employee rejected that offer, or you had employees who were fired for cause, they maybe voluntarily resigned or requested a reduction in hours, the drop in hours or number of FTEs will not be factored into a reduction in forgiveness. You do need to maintain all of that documentation. You shouldn't be required to submit that to your bank, but you should have it in your records in case you're ever asked for that. For businesses that saw a drop in FTEs for other reasons, the FTE reduction quotient will determine the amount of forgiveness that is possible. So this number is calculated by dividing the average number of FTEs during the covered period by the average number of FTEs during a chosen reference period. So that's kind of important. You can choose your reference period. It can be either February 15th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019, or January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020, depending on which is more favorable to the borrower. You could have had a growth mode in your company in 20 and maybe in 19 there were less FTEs. So you can really kind of look at your company and what the size was over the last, year and a half period and kind of figure out which reference you want to go through. Now, keep in mind that you do have until December 31st, 2020 to return to the same levels of staffing. And I know that, there's many business owners that I talk to that are, now open for business, and they're starting to rehire their employees back. And so they are really needing, fourth quarter to kind of get stable and get to those levels again. So that's an option.
All right, and then backtrack just to reiterate, because it came up a couple times, a good faith written offer. So a good faith written offer came up a couple of times there and is important to this process.
Yeah, so I think the key thing is to, offer somebody employment in writing, either an email or a letter, and they need to reject that offer. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is that, say in certain industries where people could make more money on unemployment than they could at working at their job, they would maybe reject that job offer. So as long as you get that in writing and just save that for your records, that you offered, someone their job back, that is going to allow you to have a safe harbor for that position.
And then also a reminder, I would imagine this comes up when you talk to people about having until December 31st to return to the initial levels of staffing.
Yeah. So if, for example, you had 20 people in the beginning of the year and you're maybe at 15 right now, you will get a reduction in your forgiveness until you get staffed up to that 20 FTE number. So whenever that happens, you have until the end of this year, but whenever that happens, that's probably going to be the time to submit your forgiveness application once you're fully staffed again, unless you're able to get one of those safe harbor exemptions.
Okay. Okay. And I can see we're getting some questions. A reminder, please submit those questions. We will try to get to them at the end here, and or someone after our event will reach out to you from Highland Bank. And again, the hashtag today is hashtag PPP forgiveness for a golf umbrella. All right. When can I apply for the forgiveness, and how long is it going to take to receive payment from the SBA?
So you can submit your forgiveness application anytime on or before the maturity date of the loan. So you can even submit your application before the end of your chosen cover period if you've used all the loan proceeds for which you want to request forgiveness. Lenders are able to submit forgiveness applications to the SBA as of August 10th. So, the majority, I've seen a handful come in so far to our bank. Most people are choosing the 24 weeks covered period because they weren't able to necessarily use all the funds in an 8-week time period. So they can go ahead and submit their application, say after week 10, if they've used the funds within 10 weeks, even though they chose a 24-week covered period. The key is, paying the payroll, paying the expenses, and providing all the documents to the bank to support that. So your forgiveness applications will be submitted to whoever your PPP lender is. The lender then has 60 days to make a decision, which will determine if your loan forgiveness is approved in full, approved in part, or denied. Once the lender submits their decision to the SBA then has up to 90 days to review the application and deliver its decision. So, but don't assume that the longest the process can take is 5 months, because the SBA does have the ability to request additional time. They can request additional information from any one of our borrowers before making a decision. And if the loan request is $2 million or over, the SBA is actually reviewing all of those files and will make the decision on those loans, what the forgiveness is going to look like.
And you said you're just starting to see these applications?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of banks in town that are not accepting applications, and I think I'm going to cover that a little bit later. You know, we have been accepting applications, and so we've submitted, I don't know, probably 15 so far. So we're just kind of, the portal just opened up last week. So the majority of the ones that we've received have been in the couple $100,000 range. So, you know, clearly I think some of the smaller loans, people are waiting to see kind of what happens with legislation. And you know, others are still kind of working on their applications and just maybe letting, you know, the test run of the first few happen at the SBA and see what happens, and then they'll submit theirs. So, but yeah, we've seen.
And then is there any, you've seen what?
We've seen a few come into our bank.
Okay. And then you mentioned guidance changes or legislation changes or whatever. Any sense on how to get a handle on that?
I wish I had a crystal ball and could know what's going to happen there. You know, I think when the program originally came out, people were, you know, frustrated with the guidance that was coming out because it was changing. I think at this point, people are optimistic that there will be some changes in the guidance and that the process will be more streamlined. But I don't know when that's going to happen. I've heard that there's a September 7th meeting, I believe. But I don't know exactly when that's good. But I think a lot of people are kind of waiting just to see what happens.
Sure. That makes sense. For someone that submits their forgiveness application within the required time frame, do they still have to make payment on that loan?
You know, as long as a borrower submits its loan forgiveness application within 10 months of the completion of their chosen covered period, they are not required to make any payments until the forgiveness amount is remitted to the lender by the SBA. If the loan is fully forgiven, the borrower is not responsible for any payments, including interest. If only a portion of the loan is forgiven, or if the forgiveness application is denied, then any remaining balance due on the loan must be repaid by the borrower on or before the maturity date of the loan based upon the terms of the notes.
Okay.
So if you were in the first round of PPP loans, you know, those are basically a 2-year maturity. If you're in the second round of PPP, those are a 5-year note. Mm-hmm. So none of that will really matter if you receive full forgiveness, but there's, you know, the legislation provides for plenty of time, in my opinion, to get the paperwork together and get it in before a payment has to be made. And most banks, when they set up the notes, they were, you know, interest only for 6 months and then P&I payments. So there will need certainly to be modifications to most notes at banks because of this extended time frame.
Okay. So a reminder to everybody, you can submit your questions in the comments field. We are getting close to the end of our formal presentation. Reminder, the hashtag PPP forgiveness for a golf umbrella. Subscribe and like your clubby platform that you're listening to here. And then in addition, after the fact, all the clubby videos can be found on our YouTube channel. And then also, if you want to go back and re-listen to this, you can catch us on your favorite podcast platform. So Kim, I have a bunch of questions from our audience. Before we get to those, anything that you want to say that you think maybe we didn't cover, or anything come to mind on your remarks, and then we'll go from there.
You know, I think that the big thing is that there's no rush to get your forgiveness application in. There's always the possibility of shifting guidance, potentially new legislation. All these things may impact the forgiveness application process. You know, automatic forgiveness for smaller loans is just one of the many changes that Congress is contemplating for the PPP program. So I think there's probably more likely to come in, the next month in regards to this program. So if you have your documentation together, if you've spent your money, if you want to get it off your plate, by all means, go ahead, submit it to your lender. Your lender probably isn't completely overwhelmed at this point with applications. So, we're getting ours in within probably 2 days of actually getting a complete package. If you wait until everybody submits them in, it might take up to 60 days. So, and I think there are certainly clients that are wanting to get this finalized in 2020, so they don't have any of this on their books for 2021. That's another consideration. If you're not able to achieve full forgiveness at this point and maybe want to wait and see what happens legislatively, then hold off on your application. There's no penalty. There's more than enough time per the regulations to get it in. It's really just, it's not a one size fits all. It's whatever works for each individual company.
All right. All right, so got a bunch of questions. Like I said, we will try to get to a couple of these. And if we don't get to your question, someone from Highland Bank will reach out to you. So why don't I start with this one? Longtime listener, Chris, appreciate your ongoing support, Chris. Chris goes way back several years, back when we were doing in-person events, now catching us live. Chris says, I'm having a hard time figuring out what part of the taxes withheld from our payroll report is eligible to be forgiven. Fed withholding, Medicare, Social Security, Minnesota withholding. Can you help Chris out there?
I don't claim to be an expert on all of the regs. I do know that federal taxes are not allowed. State taxes are. I don't know about Medicare or Social Security.
Okay.
Don't know about that.
All right. So Chris, Boulay Group is one of our Club E sponsors. Happy to connect you up with somebody there as they might be able to dig into that a little bit more. All right. Here's one kind of interesting from Beth. Beth says, I bought a company in 2020. How does that affect the owner compensation rules? That's a little challenging, but thought I'd put that one at you just in case you had an answer.
Yeah, with business acquisitions, that is the one area that many people are waiting for additional guidance on. I know we've had a few clients that have had, or they're wanting to sell their company and they have a PPP loan and they're wondering, what do I do? How do I take care of this? Because it is a technical default of the note to actually have a sale of your company. So I've reached out to the SBA for further guidance actually on some of these acquisition questions. I know they're working on something and I would anticipate, I'm hoping by the end of August, that more and further clarification comes out to help people that are in this transitional phase as far as questions that pertain to ones like this one.
Okay.
So we're all waiting for further guidance on that one. But
right.
I know there is some information coming.
Okay. Thank you for that question, Beth. Appreciate your participation. Another longtime participant here with Club E is Todd. Todd asks, how can we apply before the end of the covered period if there are certifications on the easy form and calculations on the regular form that must be done at the end of the covered period?
So you don't have to wait to do your calculations until the end of the covered period. It's really just when you have spent your funds and you have, spent your payroll, paid your lease, utilities, and things like that, you can perform those calculations based upon those numbers as long as you're reaching your forgiveness number. You don't have to wait the 24 weeks to get to that time period. You can go ahead and just do that based upon your numbers that you have right now. And obviously, if you're not reaching your forgiveness number, you want to go out a couple of weeks. But, almost all the applications we've received, people have chosen 24 weeks and they only used maybe, 10 or 12. And their calculations were based on those weeks. And that's allowable.
Okay. And then a reminder to everybody, it is the SBA resources section on the Highland.bank website that will have additional info, customer.service@highland.bank. If you want to reach out to them directly. Otherwise, again, we will be passing along your names and questions to the folks at Highland Bank. So appreciate your participation. Jake?
I was going to add one thing, Rick. So there was a forgiveness FAQ that was released by the SBA probably 2 weeks ago. And so we've sent that to all of our PPP clients, and I found that really helpful in answering, specific questions for people that were trying to fill out that application. And so we do have a link to that on our website, and it's the, forgiveness FAQ, and it's directly released from the SBA. So that I would recommend looking that up because there's just all sorts of good Q&A from people all over the country, and they kind of put together like a kind of a helpful summary on that.
Okay. And Jake asks, in the 8-week time period, is accrued payroll expenses that are not paid in those 8 weeks still eligible for forgiveness?
So you can choose an alternative covered period for that 8 weeks. I mean, it basically the covered period starts the day your loan funds are dispersed. If you want to choose an alternative covered period to capture payment of payroll, you can do that. Say if you want to move it up a week or back a week, and you can shift your 8-week covered period to allot for that. That's totally within the guidelines as well.
Okay. And then now that we've had a handful of questions, again, keep those questions coming. Couple here that kind of dive into the weeds that we'll pass along to you folks at Highland Bank. But Kim, after hearing a few of these questions, any other thoughts come to mind on things that you want to share with us?
As people are reading through the application itself, a lot of this information is in there. The maximum salary for owners, what is allowed as far as, different payroll things for owner or for employees versus owners. If you really read through the application, they do answer a lot of the information right in there. So I think that would be helpful if you have specific questions or the FAQs. I think between the two of them, people could probably get a lot of their questions answered.
Okay. And then we've covered a lot of ground here on the remarks that you had, questions that you and I discussed, and we got a handful of audience questions. In terms of our talk today, is there any kind of one or two main items that you'd like to either reiterate or share with anybody?
Yeah, as you're going through the forgiveness application, I think it's going to be really important to make sure that you complete it 100%. Don't leave anything blank. Double check your calculations. I mean, as a banker, we're seeing hundreds of these, and if there's one that isn't complete, it's going to get kind of put aside, and it's going to go through a different process in the bank. So it's really important, if you want your application, no matter where you're banking at, to kind of keep moving and going through the process. Just take the time and effort to complete the application in its entirety. So many people don't do that or didn't do that on the front end necessarily even. So it's just kind of I think a good practice. And also, even if you're thinking that there's going to be full forgiveness for loans 150,000 and under. It's always a possibility, but I can almost guarantee you that you're still going to need the documentation to support that. You may not need to submit it to the bank, but you are going to need it. This is a program that is funded by taxpayer dollars, and there has to be accountability. There will be accountability. So I would advise to, even if you're holding out hope thinking that there's going to be a streamlined process for you, get your documentation together, fill out your application, save it in a folder. You do have to, keep this information for 6 years. There's a 6-year look back period on this time frame. So it's a lot easier to just have it put together now and kind of push it aside versus trying to, recreate it, say 3 years down the road if you have an audit or something like that.
And then not exactly tied to the nuts and bolts of the program, but given that Highland Bank has been a longtime sponsor of Club E, and I appreciate it very much. Just wanted to have you maybe share a little bit of your experience with the audience. I know that it was a tidal wave of interest and activity. And how did you handle it all? What did the bank do? What happened behind the scenes to make everything work?
Good question. Being a smaller community bank, when we heard about this program, I have a team of 2 people in my department, did some research, and within, I think, a day or 2, we determined that this was going to be, a really good program for us to do for our clients and other businesses in our community. So we put together a team of people from, all different departments within our bank. And the program actually was unrolled on a Friday. And so we worked through the weekend and took in applications and got, hundreds processed over the course of the first couple of days of the program. And that really, helped us. We just don't have a lot of, bureaucratic stuff to go through. We just put in all of our effort and worked on the applications, and the majority of them were from our clients that first, probably 5 or 6 days. Once we got those taken care of, opened it up to, non-customers of the bank. So I think, and looking back on it, it was great that we're able to move so fast and so quickly and pull together a dedicated team of people that had never done this before, and just kind of work through the process with the tools that we had from the SBA. Because after the first weekend came out, there was all sorts of system crashes, and we had the majority of our loans already submitted at that point. So.
All right. So one question that might be helpful here, I've had a couple more come in, but don't want to run too long. And again, Kim, thank you for joining us, and thank you to Highland Bank for your ongoing support of Club E. Brent asks, is it okay if my accounting firm, and again, Boulay Group's one of our sponsors, fills out my forgiveness forms for the business? He, like a lot of folks, are a little confused with what's going on, and he doesn't want to make a mistake. So is it okay for the accounting firms to fill out these forms?
Yeah, every bank has a different process for their forgiveness applications. I know some are going to have online portals. We have our process at our bank. So I would say, he should contact his bank and see what their process is going to be. And then, yeah, his accountant can go and fill in the information to get his application accurate. I'm sure that's going to be fine. He will have to sign his application and date it. So there, like the original application, there's going to be e-signatures and things like that on the final application. But I would encourage people to reach out to, any support teams that they have if they are having challenges putting this together, because you do want to get it right, and you want to make sure that, the information is presented accurately, because it is ultimately up to the business owner to complete their application and certify to the completeness of the numbers and the calculations.
Okay. Again, info is in the SBA resources section of Highland.bank. Kim, thanks for your time. Any last closing comments or thoughts?
No, I just want to thank you for having me today. And, like I said, I'm not kind of an expert, but who can ever claim to be a complete expert when it comes to things like this? We certainly have, enjoyed working with our clients and other small businesses in the community to deliver this program. And, we're seeing certain advantages for sure. It's an important program. Yes, there are kinks that are still being worked out, but I think it's been really vital in, keeping a lot of these businesses going during this challenging time that we have right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, Kim. Thank you to Highland Bank for their support of Clubby. And would it be okay to have you back in a little bit as more things unfold?
Sure, that's fine.
All right. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Rick.